What's up? We're live.
What's up?
We're probably gonna have the least amount of viewers we've ever had, especially with our lovely draft. Rampancy with the double question mark. You thought you were slick with that, just as we're on now. Maybe you think you made something happen there. Maybe you did.
Maybe you have powers.
Maybe. Maybe. Yeah, I feel like double Seattle sporting events going on. This might be tough viewership wise.
Right.
But you could always listen to the podcast, which Ty Dane Gonzalez edits for us. Also, Ty's back, so that's the reason to watch it itself.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm back. I was on the live streams, but
true.
I'm here for an actual show.
Meeting, Anthem, first round. Right. Showed up when it mattered.
That's right. That's right. Got bamboozled by a fake account, and then Mike Silver misreading.
Smith,
pick 20.
Various Smiths were misread.
Yeah, confusing Smiths. Yep.
Yeah, and you turned up when we thought Seattle was actually serious about adding interior defensive linemen, so that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's right. I think we were getting an echo on your end, by the way, Maddie. Slight
test
echo.
1, test 2, test 1.
Let
test
me
2.
turn it down. Is that fine?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
I think my volume was just too high.
All right.
I'll be better moving forwards. I apologize.
Yeah, it'll be better tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. Just want to know mindset.
Who do you guys have between the Lakers and the Warriors?
Ooh.
Warriors in 5.
I'm gonna go Warriors in 6.
I'm gonna go Lakers in 6. I feel like it's gonna be 6 games.
No.
Warriors are the better team, but the Lakers, when they play cohesively, are pretty hard to stop.
The cohesion is going to end because there's no. The Warriors aren't stupid enough to try and bait LeBron. That was a really nice goal.
Dude,
go crack and go. Did you see that? Absolute screamer. Can you get screamers in hockey?
Yeah.
That was a screamer.
They track like the velocity of shots.
I want the velocity of that. Yeah. Bloody hell. He's absolutely launched that.
Let's go. Baby.
Look at them win that face-off, and then this with the left stick. Bang. Do you call that a slap shot?
Yeah.
Maddie,
look at that slap shot.
I still find it perplexing that hockey didn't take off in the UK.
Griff.
Just because your proximity to Scandinavia and Russia.
Were you there during the live stream when I snapped at someone because they said I specified ice hockey, and then they were like, "Hello, he said ice hockey," but actually we have we don't have ice hockey really in the UK. I mean, we do, but like it doesn't snow enough here. We don't have ice here. Like field hockey is more of a thing.
You just think culturally it would, because it's all artificial now. But I guess there aren't the roots. What about Scotland though? What about way up north?
They have have you heard of curling?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
No shot.
Yeah. That's actually really big here in Canada.
You think I don't know what curling is?
I mean, I kind of do, yeah. In Scotland, that's
everyone knows curling.
Like the ladies team in the Olympics is really good, I think, in curling, and the men's, I think. But Moorhead, I think the lady was called. She was very talented at curling.
Nice.
There's literally a curling club like 10 minutes away from here.
Yeah,
where I live.
We've got one.
Are you a good curler, Ty? Do you have a curl?
I've never attempted to curl. Should I? Do you think I would be good at it?
Probably curl occasionally.
Do you curl, Maddie?
Curling one.
I mean, no one's going to stop you.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good point. Hey, Bryce Miller, 6 strikeouts through his first 9 batters faced in his big league career.
Nice. He's off to a little start, isn't he? I mean, Maddie, in an effort to bridging the cultural divide.
It is against the A's, to be fair, but yeah.
The A's.
Hey, that's a great first team to go up against.
Well, the A's are the best, right? A's. Like there's the B's, the C's, D's, the A's.
Yeah, right. And the Mariners are obviously the Z's because
Mariners ends in his head.
Kelnick hitting second is fun.
Yeah.
No, he's hitting third. I'm wrong.
Well, he was going to hit second.
Right now.
He was going to hit second, but then Julio Julio's back flared up, and so they rearranged the order, and now Kelnick got bounced to third.
Interesting.
Cool.
Okay, what if we talked about the Seahawks?
Yeah, let's talk about Seahawks. Could someone tweet out that we're live?
Sure.
Guys, please do retweet the tweet that we're live. We're going to talk about the Seahawks now, not other Seattle sports.
Are you sure you guys don't want to talk about the Storm?
Yeah, how are they doing?
I think their season starts soon.
Nice.
They had to move one of their preseason games because of the Kraken game on Tuesday.
It's a bit of a transitional period for them, right? Is that wrong?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sue retired. Brianna Stewart went to New York.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Rebuilding. But if we know anything about Seattle sports, no such thing as rebuild.
Only retool and compete.
Exactly. Right. Let's go. Oh, I can do the thing, guys. If you're ready, I'll do the thing. Are you ready?
Do the thing. Do the thing. I'm ready.
Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where Griffin, Ty, and me, Matty F. Brown, are going to recap the Seahawks 2023 NFL Draft. However, before that moment, we have two items of important Seattle Seahawks news. Firstly, the Seattle Seahawks decided not to take up the fifth-year option of linebacker Jordan Brooks. Brooks was drafted in the first round out of Texas Tech in 2020. He had a up and down 2022 season, and which ended sadly shortly when he tore his ACL. Griff, should Seattle have taken up this option?
No, not with the injury. They have to make sure he comes back the same guy. And then further, if he does come back the same guy, I think there's benefit to rather want to extend him instead, because then that 2024 cap hit can be lower than the option, depending on the structure. And they typically think they like cheap year one cap hits. They tend to backload a little bit. So I don't see. I feel like it was a win-win. It kind of hedges both scenarios going forward.
Agreed.
Ty, what do you think?
Yeah, it gives him an opportunity to, if he is able to get back to even 75% to where he was, gives him an opportunity to hit free agency a year early, and protects the Seahawks in case he doesn't have that bounce back as well. So it works out for both parties at the end of the day.
Yeah. $12.722 million is what the fifth year option would have taken up. You just can't really justify paying that. And, you know, the argument against first round off ball linebackers is that if you look at the data, they're one of the worst positions for having that fifth year option taken up. And linebackers in general are kind of cheap contract wise. But the really rare ones, which Brooks was when he came out as well, and testing wise, also tape wise, they are worth paying more money. In my opinion, they can do everything on the field. They can stay on the field all three downs. They can do a bit of everything, which Brooks at his best can. The disappointing thing about 2022, and maybe it was because Bobby Wagner departed from the team. Maybe it was because, you know, Brooks had to go and be the signal caller as well. And maybe it was because it was just a complete mess all around him, especially up front. But he had a down year. It was up and down. There was some odd errors. Everyone had odd errors, but Brooks did too. And then that ACL injury is tough. Hopefully he'll recover from that okay. I still think they would have really been more likely to pick up the option if he hadn't got hurt. But that's it, isn't it, lads? That's it.
Yeah. I think in their mind, they still see him as a core player, but they just need to, feel confident about that. And they don't feel confident about that in this moment. So, yeah, it's just wait and see.
Yeah, the way that Pete Carroll talks about him is like it's rare praise that he gives Jordan Brooks. Like, what's that phrase he uses?
Natural player. And he's the first guy that he brings up anytime when someone says, who are your core guys? He's like, well, I think Brooks is that. I think Woolen is that. I think Diggs is that. Like, it's plus he's not, none of it's theoretical. He's shown that he can do everything an elite linebacker can do. The next question is, can he put together a full season? And when he hasn't done it consistently, it tends to correlate when everyone else is playing poorly, like you mentioned, and when there are other messes around. And sometimes he adds to it, don't get me wrong, but when they're scheming how I think they want to be, he's leading the charge along with two other guys on the defense, Diggs and Woolen probably, that were a big reason why they turned it around. So he's as much of the solution as anyone. So yeah, hopefully, first things first, it's just, does he come back athletically? So
Okay, so second item of news is, I mean, I don't know how surprising it is. Brooks, I don't think was that surprising, but disappointing nonetheless. Puna Ford, who the Seahawks chose not to pay in free agency, they waited him out. They signed Jamont Jones, their blockbuster free agent. Instead, Tom Pelissero of NFL Network reported that Puna Ford is signing a one-year deal with the Buffalo Bills. Per Pelissero, Ford turned down more elsewhere to try and win a ring in Buffalo. This sucks.
It does. It does indeed. Griff, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it sucks. Probably out of their price range. The numbers haven't come out yet. I bet the numbers are around 4 to 5 million. And right now, with their cap, they can only afford like a veteran minimum right now. So it felt, my dogs are opinionated as well, as you can tell. They probably, I feel like a restructure would have to be paired with it. I don't know what flexibility they have there, or an extension maybe with Nwosu. But yeah, that sucks because it's putting a lot of pressure on the additions. Turnover anyway. That can be jarring at first. And then you're putting a lot on the rookies that we're going to talk about. I'm not sure that they're equal or better players right out of the gate. We've talked about Jaron Reed. And then the hardest part is that, well, no, it's not necessarily the hardest part, but we'll talk more about the D-line later. But I feel like they needed some continuity here, someone that they can be really confident in, that when they're scheming right, gives the scheme what it needs. And there's just a lot of question marks. So it's now they have to set their sights towards Shelby or Al, maybe the Titans guy they had in here. But yeah, there's just so many question marks.
Yeah, it feels like this is going to end with Al Woods making his return. And even Pete talked about Al on, I think it was after day 3 when they did their press conference, that, they want him back. So, and Al didn't he visit Cleveland and said that like he wanted to wait until after the draft to kind of reassess where everything was. So I think that's ultimately where we're getting to, because like you said, Griff, you need some level of continuity. And I just feel like now that that Puna is gone, you got to kind of pivot now and just focus all your energy on bringing back either Al or Shelby or both.
Agreed. I mean, like right now as it stands, one of their main guys in the rotation, he's not going to be a starter, but one of them is like a total projection, like Mike Morris. I like him a lot, but he was not a 3 technique in college, like hardly even on pass down. So now they're talking about him as an interior player completely, and it's like he's going to be playing probably 300 to 500 snaps this year as it stands right now, and that's not something he's done in college. So like we're talking about ideas right now, we're talking about theory, because that's where they're at. And it's like Jaron Reed might have to play 600 snaps right now. I'm not looking forward to that.
Cam Young's going to have to take a lot of snaps at this point right now. Like
Cam Young might be their second best defensive lineman, a 4th round rookie. So or whatever was he a 4th rounder?
Yeah, he was 4th.
He was.
Yeah, he was 4th. Yeah.
So we'll talk about the new additions, but the fact remains that even after the draft, and in terms of draft picks and then Jaron Reed, they have just 2 over 300-pound players on the roster. And even with football getting lighter, that is a lack of mass, considering the O-line doesn't really get lighter when it comes to the NFL.
Yeah.
Now, what about Robert? Are we counting Robert Cooper, the undrafted free agent?
I said draft picks.
What is
Robert Cooper's weight, Griff?
335.
The Seahawks season is saved. But
what's funny though is that he seems more like he doesn't seem like he's 335.
No, anyway. he looks kind of small. Anyway, I think the arms.
Well, one way to add a lot of beef
maybe
is
it's the
arms. So
if he had longer arms, he'd be 350 pounds. Anyway, that might be overstating how heavy arms are or long arms are. Anyway, just finishing on Puna Ford. I felt with Pete Carroll's comments about Al Woods tie, I think, if they were grading guys in terms of order they'd want them back, Puna Ford would have been first. The way Pete said,
Right.
I love Al Woods, it was kind of like I love Lamp. Um, it was
Yeah.
it was slightly odd, but
Sure.
and they did start rattling through each guy. But I feel Puna Ford would have been highest on the list, and kind of by the Seahawks' own admission, if you go through their press conference sort of end of season quotes, not just Pete, but Schneider as well, and maybe even Clint Hurt, they said how they liked Puna Ford over the center or outside center, implying head up nose tackle or one technique nose tackle. But throughout the year, he only played outside the shoulder of the guard or as heavy on the guard as a 2-eye, really. Now, they tried to unlock him a bit, playing him as a 5 tech in under front, which was a late season adaptation. But like, really, they didn't play him enough in the stuff he was good at. And so he regressed this year, partly because of the schematic issues, schematic application they experienced. I think there's also truth in that. I think it looked like he'd slimmed down to try and rush the passer better, which in a contract year makes sense to try and earn more money. He did have a career best year in sacks, but it was only 3. So it's
Right.
hardly like astonishing. And I don't think he'll have got paid that much by Buffalo. Rumor is, as I said, that he got offered more elsewhere, but Buffalo, I don't think on a 1-year deal they'll have offered to pay him too much. Hopefully he gets the ring with them. It's just a shame how it's ended in Seattle, given that he played some really good football here. It's just the mess of last year, and then the way that they've gone about free agency. You could say they've mishandled it, but they've lost a solid player. And as Griff said, like you're relying a lot on the unknown, not just in the fact that they're rookies, not just in the fact that they're day 3 or undrafted free agents, but also in the fact that there's projections.
Yeah.
Buddy, this isn't their position.
Well, yeah, and it just feels like an over reliance on scheme, right? Like, oh, it doesn't matter really what the personnel looks like as long as we can scheme it. And I just I don't know.
Yeah, so like and again we're getting ahead of ourselves, but we'll be able to still keep things relative by like the aggregate numbers might change, but that can be positive or negatively, but that will be a reflection of how much they do of X, Y, and Z. But we can still look at their performance from last year to this year in X and in Y and in Z, even if they do less and more of each. We can still keep it consistent, and then we'll really know if they actually got more or less talented, or maybe talented is the wrong word, what the execution discrepancy was, if there is one. Like they can have worse numbers in 3-4 or in bear, but still be better overall just by doing more bear, more 3-4. But it just depends on how much that falls. So yeah, a lot. So a lot is being placed on the shoulders of Draymond Jones and Nwosu right now to carry a load, and then of course the development of other players. But
maybe the takeaway also is that Bear doesn't require you to be as talented because you're going to be one-on-one a lot of the time. I think that's slightly misguided, but there is an element of truth to that.
It's just, well, it's certainly it's I mean, how much easier it is could definitely be up for debate, but it's easier than what they were doing in the 2-4-5. I mean, that's just putting an extreme amount of stress on a defensive tackle. Like we've beat to death. There are so few defensive tackles that would have in the league that would have performed well in what they did last year, how they did it, and how often they did it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I mean, these guys they brought in aren't going to do. They'd be even worse in it. So
yeah. So let's talk about the guys that they brought in. So the NFL draft happened. Seattle made a lot of picks. I don't know the exact
I think it was 10.
Maybe I should.
Pretty sure it was 10.
Yeah, but like it was 10, but when was the last time they did this? Like made 10 picks. There was that year where they made a lot of picks which weren't very good.
2017? Right? Was that the Odiambo, Procise, Vanette draft?
Yeah, you might be right. But what was unique about this draft for Seattle was not only did they make a large volume of picks, but courtesy of the Russell Wilson trade, a small trade down as well with the Denver Broncos. Although that didn't net them an extra pick this year. Oh, no, it did. Anyway, basically they picked high. So They picked 5 overall and picked cornerback Devon Witherspoon. There'd been much speculation out of Illinois. There'd been much speculation that Seattle would draft Jalen Carter. I heard that Anthony Richardson was the number 1 player on their board. Obviously, Will Anderson was such an obvious fit, even though he wasn't Seahawky in the way he rushed the passer. But with Will Anderson Jr. gone and Jalen Carter seemingly not on their board, and the importance of character once more raised in the post-draft press conferences after it being harped on earlier in the pre-draft stuff, Devon Witherspoon was the pick, which Griff, we mocked. So pat on the back for us. Ty, I'm sure you'd have taken part in that and done that as well, because, we're all so smart and clever.
We did it under the pretense where we said, okay, let's go corner here for the sake of the
Let's be so random.
Yeah.
And this Seahawks draft overall actually kind of reads random, but Witherspoon, Griff.
With your spoon, I hardly know her. What are you talking about? Yeah. So are you asking me what I think about this pick?
Yeah.
I like it a lot. I think it's really it's really cool they went corner, and I really like Witherspoon as a player. But would I have preferred other guys before the draft? Absolutely. If you presented to me 3 scenarios where I could ensure one of them happened, Witherspoon would not have been the first one. In hindsight, I've definitely talked myself into him, talked myself into the whole concept of going corner over D-line, stuff like that. But so, I mean, yeah, I like the pick. The alternative scenarios are interesting. Obviously, Anderson didn't fall to them, so don't even have to worry about it. There was so much talk about Tyree Wilson, like publicly on and off the record, and they didn't go there. Maybe it was never true, or maybe it was something about his medicals gave them pause at the very end. And then obviously they passed on Jalen Carter, and I understand it, so I'm not going to bemoan that. I still, if I was Lord Emperor of the Universe, I would have taken Jalen Carter at 5, I think. But I'm still really happy with Devon Witherspoon and what that means for the secondary stuff. But what did you guys think about the pick and everything?
Yeah, so the Carter thing is really interesting. In a perfect world, I would have loved that, I would have loved for it to be Carter, but there's obviously some things behind the scenes that impacted this decision that we aren't privy to that made them feel uncomfortable to pick him. Because let's be honest about it, if he didn't have all this stuff going on, he's the pick at that spot. I have no doubt about that. And with regards to Wilson, we heard before, 24 hours before the draft, something like that a few teams had flagged Wilson for his foot thing. So maybe the Seahawks were one of those teams and the Raiders weren't, and that's why he still went relatively high after the Seahawks passed on him. Who knows? I think the pick would have been Richardson, right? But he goes the pick beforehand. So really, at that point, you're left with 2 options: trade down and lose out on Devon Witherspoon because Lions were likely taking him. There was, I forget who now. I apologize, but someone said that they had heard that was the case, that the Lions were set to take Witherspoon, and that's why they traded out. That came out today. So it was, what was more valuable to you? Best corner in the draft, or someone that gives you an elite secondary potentially, or whatever you can get in a trade down? And so they opted for the former there, and I don't really blame them. Again, we'll talk about Smith and Jigba as well in a second, but to come out of this draft with CB1 and wide receiver 1, you have to feel great about yourself. So overall, I'm into the pick. I was a little, taken aback at first because I hadn't really thought about Witherspoon or given much consideration to that, because they just, 1, because they just have never taken corner that high, and 2, because I thought it's going to be Wilson or Anderson or Carter or whoever. But I like the pick overall. I think it's a good selection, and they got someone that's going to be, at the end of the day, when you have an asset like that, just get a really good player, get a blue chipper. And I think that
for sure,
I think that Witherspoon is a blue chipper. So
yeah, yep, I agree.
I agree, and I have to say, watching guys through, watching the tape, Anderson didn't feel Seahawky to me in the sense that, his style of edge rush wasn't that. And I suspect they would have taken him if he was there. But he didn't feel Seahawky. Anthony Richardson did because of just how traitsy he was, and maybe he'd have been the pick. And it's interesting to me that Pete Carroll unprompted raised him first. Schneider, when asked about not drafting quarterbacks, was like, "Well, 3 went before us," like, and then he said how you can't force things. Well, forcing a trade up with Arizona would have been so expensive. Like in division, I don't even know if they'd have done that. And then suddenly it just creates a weird dynamic. Whereas if you sit at 5 and you take a quarterback, which Schneider, Carroll informed Geno Smith and Drew Lock of the potential of doing that, that's a thing. Tyree Wilson felt really Seahawky to me, but the medical thing, Schneider mentioning after day 2 that the draft was super random and they'd had guys come off our medical board already. So guys, they had medical red flags on, and that's throughout the draft. Well, during day 2 and day 1, they were drafted too. Maybe Tyree Wilson was that, maybe not, but he felt Seahawky in his style, more Seahawky than in terms of the traitsy elements than like a Will Anderson did. But then I'm missing some. Oh yeah, Jalen Carter. As soon as that offseason report came out, I thought they're not going to do that. It's just obviously there's due diligence, but they were speaking so much about character. Schneider said we generally do best when we take the best players. It just didn't feel right. And he kept mentioning how they drafted grown men and leaders and alpha dogs and all this stuff, and clearly that was on the forefront of their mind. And so Witherspoon felt like a complete like Seahawky player when I watched the tape. And then you hear Pete Carroll compare his character to reminding him of a Troy Polamalu in the way that he competes. I mean, it's just so obvious. And compared to say like, I know Christian Gonzalez ended up going later than people expected, but watching him and then watching Witherspoon, like I said at the time when we did, I think we briefly talked corners. Griff asked me who my cornerback 1 was. I said Witherspoon because he just the way he plays the game, just his style of coverage as well, technique wise, it just fits what Seattle's doing so nicely, and so it proved. So it's also cool, we'd heard, as Griff said, it's cool they took a cornerback early. We'd heard that Derek Stingley was in consideration for them. We'd heard that Sauce Gardner as well would have been a pick for them. So, as much as it's nice that they take corners in the 3rd round, like a Shaquille Griffin and do well with them, or Tariq Woolen or Richard Sherman in the 5th rounds of drafts, them actually going and getting a corner who they love the character of, a guy who can play nickel or can play outside in the system, a guy who can hit, a guy who can blitz, a guy who brings it against the run, and a guy who seems like a very good leader and he's not super old. I think you just got to love all these things. Now, the stuff he can work on, and we'll break down, we'll break down the tape of each prospect in more detail. We'll do it week by week, each draft pick. But like, as much as it was disappointing that they just obviously said Carter wasn't the right guy for them, but it wasn't actually surprising. Yeah. And at that point, who are you drafting? I'm glad they didn't have to pick at 7. That's
for sure.
Re-emphasize that they got their guy.
There's an argument to be made, even if you feel like Anderson is a fairly safe pick, because I know there are concerns with like the bend and everything, like for a guy to pick that high. There's still an argument to be made that Devin Witherspoon was by far the safest pick of the blue chips. I still would have taken the other guys, but it is kind of nice to come away from the draft and tying in with what you said, Ty, like just knowing that you got a guy, a blue chip. And then again, it coming at the secondary when you've already got Tariq Woolen, and then you've got prototypical free safety for when you want to play cover 3, prototypical strong safety, provided Jamal comes back the same guy when you want to play again, cover 3. But then also they're interchangeable fairly enough anyway. And 2 high stuff, the fact that you could very well have a top 5 secondary, that's totally within their grasp. So would going D-line make your roster front to back on defense be more balanced? Yeah, it would. But if you can assure one area of your team is like elite, then you can scheme accordingly and you can lean on them when you want to and accentuate them when you want to. And it kind of allows you to deal with your weaknesses in easier ways. Like just having the assurance is awesome. And the idea that they could be top 5 is rooted in the fact that, well, just think about how quality Diggs is. Think about how good Tariq Woolen was last year. Julian Love is a solid hedge and just a good player in his own right. Jamal Adams could come back. And then, of course, Devin is Devin. But let's remember from week 6 on last year when they kind of got their act together, there is some turnover, but they were like the 6th or 7th ranked pass defense from week 6 through 18 last year. That doesn't, sure, strength of schedule, randomness, whatever you want to call it, like playing with splits, whatever, but it just shows that what they already had, that's what they're capable of. So now you're adding Devin Witherspoon to that. If anything, you're making sure your floor doesn't fall again. You're making sure you don't start week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like just falling apart, and then it ascends your ceiling to an absurd level. And it's not like, again, it's not like they don't have a foundation here in coverage. They were a really capable team at times last year, so for prolonged stretches. So I think this just really reinforces it, and they're finally saying, like, we're going to be elite on the perimeter. We're going to make we're going to be a problem for teams. We're going to be a mismatched team. You're going to have an issue when you play us. So I don't think that was pre-planned. It was just more like, let's see who comes to us at 5, make the best decision, and then we'll kind of reframe our thinking accordingly. That's kind of what they've done. They're all in on their secondary. I mean, it's awesome. So
come on, time for the gross part before I talk a bit more about positional value. Griff, grade the pick.
I said A-, but that minus was only out of that was only out of disappointment for wanting Carter. Witherspoon himself is an A. And wanting to balance out the roster, because I also thought strategically going D-line early made sense, because that let the draft fall accordingly. Sure enough, look what happened. The next defensive lineman they take is in the 4th round. So, and he's just he can be a good one, but he's only intended to be a run stuffer, and you can find those guys anywhere all the time. So that's not entirely true, but anyway, so that's why I think A-. But anytime you get a blue chip, I'm not complaining, man. It's a great pick. So
yeah, I can't remember if I did B+ or A-, because that was also just based off of what Griff said in terms of being disappointed that it wasn't Carter. But overall, yeah, now that I've had a couple days to digest the pick and think about it and look more into it and all that, yeah, it's an A for me. At the end of the day, you got a blue chip player that's going to make one of your position groups potentially one of the best in football. So can't really have any complaints with that.
Yeah, I'm going to give it an A- just because this is the bad process and this isn't how you should operate. But they've been very good at finding cornerbacks in later rounds, and so. But I don't know who else they picked, so really it should be an A. What?
Yeah, I mean, it is a deep corner. It was a deep corner class. There are high quality starters to be found in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round this year. So
yeah, and I'd have loved, like with a lot of things, I'd love to know, how Seattle evaluated them, how they had them graded. What difference was Witherspoon? I mean, when he's that rare a character, as Pete Howard was saying, I mean, he must have just been off the charts in terms of their like intangibles stuff.
For sure. I would
also
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Ty.
Well, I was just going to say that I would be curious to see how they would rank them, or how they would rank Witherspoon in comparison to Stingley and Gardner.
Exactly. That's the other thing I wanted to know. So really quick, Maddie, what you said with Witherspoon, like as an individual, not just their eval of him as like a pure corner on the field, the whole picture, right? There's definitely a je ne sais quoi going on there with him that they felt like they couldn't say no to. Like anytime Pete Carroll brings up Troy Polamalu, like that's a name he brought up with Earl Thomas. Like to Pete, like that's just a guy who is just, there's something about him, and in ways that translate tangibly onto the field. But then, yeah, so Ty, I wondered that too. Like there was concrete reason to believe that they actually would have taken Stingley last year if he fell, and they thought that he might because of his injuries in college, and that they actually had him, surprisingly, considering their history, over Gardner, which I think that was the consensus pick. But for Seattle, that they would also have Stingley over Gardner was of note. But then Pete mentioned something like Witherspoon is one of the best, or he said something, I can't remember what his exact wording was, but it was in the post presser, that he was not a guy that we have seen in recent years. So something like that to insinuate that they might actually have had him higher than Stingley, Gardner, Surtain. I mean, I'm curious.
We haven't seen a guy like this, he said.
Right. And maybe he's just hyping his pickup, like it could be anything. But I would like to know, and that could apply to other things, not just their playing style. So, but yeah, I would love to be that fly on the wall, Ty, as you're talking about, and be like, how do you stack him up with Stingley, with Gardner, with Surtain, with Horn coming out as prospects? Where does he really fit? So,
Griff,
but
does it
I love
upset
it.
you that I mean, I know in the past you've had issues with this, that Witherspoon's under 6 foot. I know you're a bit heightist.
I like the short corners. I don't mind. DJ Reed radicalized me, man. And what's
Yeah.
funny about Reed was that he wasn't even that great of an athlete. He was an okay athlete. He's just all fight, all dog, and technique and smarts, and like it
Okay.
adds up, right? So Witherspoon is basically that, but also extremely athletic, right? So, um,
Thank you for taking that question sincerely.
yeah,
So
of course, anything for you, Maddie.
there you go. So Seattle, interestingly, as we've already alluded to, then went and drafted a wide receiver. So in terms of upgrading the perimeter, like Griff saying about them taking the perimeter seriously with cornerbacks on the franchise tag earn $18.16 million, which is higher than, for instance, a safety, just below a linebacker, slightly below a defensive tackle, but higher than a tight end, higher than a running back, positions that Seattle have taken in the first round in the past. Then Seattle took a wide receiver who Jackson Smith-Njigba doesn't play on the perimeter, but $19.76 million on the franchise tag is the cap number for wide receivers. But Njigba is a wide receiver 3, and I'm trying to find the Pete Carroll quote exactly, but he said after the draft that wide receiver 3 was a big deal for Seattle coming into the draft. It was like a area they really wanted to address. So, Ty, this was your dude, right? You really wanted him. You were so happy when this happened.
Yeah, well, I really just wanted a wide receiver 3 in general, just like they did. And I thought that if you were going to do it in this draft, you had to do it at pick 20 or after a very small trade down. Because, I mean, because to me, there was a massive cliff after the first 4 guys. And look exactly what happened after they take JSN. Quentin Johnson goes next. And then it's Zay Flowers. And then it's Jordan Addison, all consecutively. So, and I didn't, I thought that Johnson was redundant with having DK and all that stuff. So he was not in consideration for me. But Addison, Flowers, JSN, I really would have been happy with any of the 3. But JSN, especially, I think he has the most upside. And I think he fits exactly what they need to a T, because he can create after the catch. He plays incredibly well over the middle. He plays well in in short yardage situations, because he's an absolute technician at the line of scrimmage, and he wins consistently at the line of scrimmage. And so in terms of quick game, in terms of, the routes that Gino loves to throw, all that, he fits that perfectly. And so he's such a great complement to Lockett, who's getting older, and we've talked about that a bit. And DK, who is incredibly talented but also very limited in his route tree. So it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It unlocks a dimension that they just haven't had in this offense. They tried to do that with D. Eskridge. It just unfortunately didn't work because of partly because of injuries and what have you. But this to me was, and I don't want to get super hot takey on here, but this to me was kind of a statement from Seahawks saying, like, we don't want to just have a good offense. Like, we want to have the best offense in the world. And because it's a luxury at the end of the day. You don't absolutely need a good third receiver to go far, to do whatever you want to do. But having that guy unlocks so much more stuff for them. And with the way that they want to throw the ball, and we saw it at times whenever, Marquise Goodwin would have the occasional good game, what having that third receiving option does for this team, for this offense. So I'm thrilled. Like, that's an A+++++ pick to me.
Agreed 100% with all that. Yeah, like, so I mean, what we talked about Smith-Njigba specifically, totally agree with all of it. And then back to your original comment, how like you would have been okay with Addison and Zay Flowers too. I'm right there with you. Like, honestly, I really wasn't sure who I really had as like my 1, my 2, and my 3. I would have talked myself into any one of those 3 had they taken them. and each one takes you down a slightly different path and stylistically in terms of what offense you do with how they fit with or around those two. But the one thing about Smith-Njigba that he has over those two is that exactly what he is, what he will be in the NFL is the most clear, is the most like transparent. Like what he is in college is exactly what he's going to be in the NFL. With Addison, it's what he is in college theoretically is most valuable in the NFL, but there are viability concerns with him running only a 4.49 at 5'11", 170 with short arms. It's like if he ran a 4.38, people right or wrong would go, okay, Devontae Smith, and they wouldn't worry about the height and the weight. But because he ran a 4.49, it's like, yeah, he theoretically can be the do-it-all perimeter guy, but is he even going to be viable? So is his not viable in the sense that is his college presence as a de facto number one, how he stresses a college defense, is he going to do the same thing in the NFL? If you take him around DK and Tyler with Geno, like he's going to be productive, but it's just there are question marks. With Jackson Smith-Njigba, there are no question marks. With Zay Flowers, you get some redundancy with Tyler, which can be a good thing in the right hands because you get the flip side of redundancy is interchangeability. It's be really fun. You stay explosive forever. He can do some possession stuff on the outside, but you probably don't run him over the middle as much, not because he can't, but just because the frame, you're running more deeper digs, perhaps not as many intermediate digs. And again, they'd still use that, would have been fine. But like you said, Ty, Jackson Smith-Njigba is just on paper around DK and Tyler is frankly perfect. So it's like, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, not sure why not. I'm all for it. And I totally see the argument for him over Zay and Jordan. It's just because there are the fewest question marks of the coolest part, and then that's the coolest part. And then, the statement of they want to have like the best offense possible. They really attacked an area that wasn't a weakness per se, so much as an opportunity to get so much better.
Yeah.
On
we'll get into this more. Sorry, just real quick. We'll get into this more though. But like in terms of the having a great offense, like they feel stacked at pretty much every offensive position now. Like
Right.
line seems like it's in a really good place. Tight end is a little questionable, and I would have preferred for them to walk away from this draft with a tight end. But and that's mostly because like who knows what's going on with Disley's injury and all that. They keep on saying it's unique and all that stuff, and that's concerning whenever you hear Pete Carroll use that kind of terminology. Plus, they Fant and Parkinson are free agents, etc. after the end of this year. But overall, like they have an abundance of talent everywhere, and it just feels like they're really emphasizing that side of the ball, and that they want to be dominant. They want to, and maybe that's also a response to the fact that they're not sure how this thing is going to go on defense, so they feel like they need to add a lot of firepower on the offensive side of the ball as well, in case they're going to have to play these high scoring games this year.
Right. Maddie, how did you feel about it?
Well, on the fit, I felt it was very cool how Schneider said similar stuff to what we've been saying. He was like, Tyler can still go vertical. DK's more of a power guy. Like, he's that power X sort of thing. Like, Smith-Njigba fills a very different role on the offense, day one, fit-wise. And then what's cool about him is, as well, he's like 6'1.5" and 196 pounds. Like, a lot of the other guys in this class were not that size. They were not big. Now, 196 pounds at 6'1.5" is slightly skinnier, but he put on some weight. And the 3-cone of 6.57 seconds, the short shuttle of 3.93 seconds, those are like top tier, especially that short shuttle. They're incredibly high numbers, like just so high. And you think about how Schneider liked 3-cone king and Julian Edelman. He's always had a bit of a thing for these kind of nippy slots. Tried to get it done with John Ursua. Tried to get it done with Doug Baldwin to a much higher success rate. But like Smith-Njigba doing this in the first round, how about that? And it is a luxury at this point. And I think it allows Geno Smith to really go to work and speaks to the trust that they have in him to operate from a pocket as a passer and dish it out, distribute it round. But also I like how proactive it is with the fact that you can take Tyler Lockett's health for granted, and you can take DK Metcalf's health for granted and also his production. But Lockett in particular is getting up there in age now. This is a move, not just for now, but for the future. The nature of draft picks young players. Are you concerned that Smith and Jigba only appeared in 3 games in 2022, very limited usage, and ended up not finishing the season with a hamstring injury? Slightly. He says he's fully healthy now. He was able to run his 40. He clocked in a 4.52 at the combine and then a 4.48 at his pro day. Unofficial, that is obviously it's a pro day time. But yeah, really cool. And yeah.
Well, and the flip side of that too, right? Like the lack of games that he played last year. I mean, if he did play a full season or close to that, you're probably not coming away from this draft with Devin Witherspoon and Jackson Smith and Jigba. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and
himself said that he acknowledged that.
The 4.52 at the the pro days you never know, but the 4.52 at the combine surprised me because I wouldn't have been surprised, nor would I have flinched at taking him at 20 had he ran like a 4.6. Keenan Allen ran a 4.7. Like what did Michael Thomas run? Did he run like a high 4.5 or something? So you can make it work in the slot. You may not be the explosive oriented one, but the fact that he ran a 4.52, like again, I didn't see that on his sophomore year, but it's entirely possible that he is legitimately faster just by getting with like a speed trainer and stuff. And if he was actually a 4.6 guy on tape and now he's actually a legit 4.5 flat guy, then that does benefit his game too. In a lot of arenas. And yeah, Maddie, like the biggest thing with him is like you mentioned all those slot receiver names, right? And then the theme with those guys is those guys are like 5'9", 5'10", 170, 180, moving like that. So, and they're great players, right? So, but what's special about him is that he moves like those guys, as you were saying, but also like you were saying at 6'1", almost 6'1", nearly 200 pounds. So, and that matters. Like play strength matters. His even though he's not like a crazy go up and get a guy with crazy hands, he still can play outside of his frame, but his implicit frame is bigger than it is, his radius. Even if he's not going up and getting it, so to speak, it's still bigger than the 5'10" guys. Just like his hip box is bigger. So, yeah, it's exciting stuff. So,
his hip box, you a gamer, Griff.
Yep. That's how I think about it, though. Is like Jimmy Graham, Jimmy Graham's hitbox is huge, even if he's not like draping all over people. He's 6'7", like you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So being 6'1" versus 5'10" will show up in certain ways, especially when he moves like the 5'10" guys. That's what makes him so special.
So does Devin Witherspoon have aimbot on then? We're using gaming terminology.
Gino's got aimbot.
Gino has aimbot. Yeah.
So just the Pete quote was, that's what we were in pursuit of in the draft, talking about the third receiving option. That's why I was so excited to have gotten him. And as you said, Ty, and it's a theme, like Seattle had the opportunity to start a run on the position, and they did this time. Now, later in the draft, they declined that chance. But it's cool that they kind of, that's what picking high... this was basically, because it's their second pick. It's and going best player available, which they did basically. That's that's where it creates those kinds of opportunities.
One last thing I want to say is when it comes to like attrition and stuff, like depth is good because 3 is more than 2, just regardless of skill set types, right? But when they do regress, or at least when they regress to Gino, it's the explosive stuff, the ability to get vertical didn't really die. It's the possession oriented stuff, the snap to snap consistency, and his specific skill set kind of supports that floor from not falling too far. It helps them stay. It kind of preempts the attrition, not just by virtue of depth, but his specific skill set will allow them to stay more consistent and more possession oriented and just keep moving the chains. Because as protection might wane due to injury, Gino having to play faster, JSN fits right into that of complementing that effort. So it's really good from a lot of different angles. Yeah. So good stuff.
So after that period, Seattle picked at 37 overall, and before that, I tweeted that I'd be happy if they came away with Ojulari and Alabama's Byron Young and then Cameron Young. So instead of BJ Ojulari, who tested very poorly, at pick 37, they took Auburn's Derek Hall, which was a name that we were familiar with and we hadn't rated highly. But he was, like Ojulari, the last of the outside linebackers who were over 250 pounds and had over 34-inch long arms. Hall weighing in at 254. Oh, we didn't grade Smith and Jigba. Grade it quickly.
A plus 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 plus.
I'll give it an A. Thank you very much. But Derek Hall, 254 pounds, 34.5-inch long arms, which nice, great.
Yeah.
And his overall relative athletic score per Kentley Platt at MathBum on Twitter was 9.37, which was the 98th out of 1,545 defensive ends in terms of athleticism. So very athletic. 1.55 10-yard split, a 10'7" broad jump, a 4.2 second short shuttle, which agility-wise he did way better than his tape shows. Or maybe it doesn't. So, Griff, you're the edge rush guy. You're the D-line guru. How do you feel about this pick with the dust settling?
I liked him. I just thought he was a third-round prospect. I guess with the cliff hitting in the draft and then the combine being what it was, I guess maybe he had to go in the second round. They really emphasized like character and competitive fire with him. So clearly there's something that they got from this guy that made them really confident to go there, especially when, you know, they had obviously a much more pressing need on the interior. And John Schneider kind of alluded to there's a guy who went the third that they wanted, that they were maybe surprised that went. And then that was probably Byron Young in a likelihood. But then also like Benton was there. And while maybe 37 felt like a slight overdraft, he still ended up going 49. But Derek Hall also felt like an overdraft. So like that wouldn't necessarily be the deterrent. So clearly just really like Derek Hall. Like that's one thing to take from this. As a player, I mean, it's like, I don't think he's that stiff. I think he's actually fairly fluid and coordinated. I think he's just inconsistent with his approach. But his combine on tape, he looks like he's more like 85% of his combine. And again, that's kind of like he plays that way. Maybe their thinking is he can time up his the snap more. Maybe the pure get off will assert itself a little bit. And then the traits at the top of the rush. He does do some stuff at the top of the rush where he just looks like, man, he's an explosive, strong, weight-adjusted 255 guy that is just a lot to handle. He just doesn't do it as frequently as you want to see. He does have some really good games, but he also has some really bad games. So with the idea that was his age 21 season, maybe they think we can harness the good games, and that is their MO with D-line, especially in the second round. That's also the nature of second round prospects anyway. But Darrell Taylor in college had a lot of really good games and some games where he just does nothing. Frank Clark was the same at Michigan. I mean, Malik McDowell was that way as a prospect, just as a player, like some truly first round stuff and then second, third, fourth round stuff, right? So, I mean, that's kind of Derek Hall. I don't know if the highs are that high. I don't know if the lows are that low either, though. He definitely figures to be a good run defender as well. Again, 255 matters. It matters for a lot of reasons. I'm glad that they've got three guys in that weight class between Nwosu, Mafe, and Derek Hall. Like, that's clearly what they want. I still think it's worth to bet on Darrell Taylor just because the explosiveness is so explosive, even though he's probably 245. But anyway, it's again, like when we do the in-depth tape breakdown, I'm going to go through and watch just about every college snap of Derek Hall, and we're going to see like what kind of rusher he is, what the themes are, and then what they think they can harness, and then blow up for a larger sample. So that's all I got on Derek Hall. What do you guys think?
Well, on the point that you made about Seattle really liking him, Schneider, he referred to the upsets, which we can talk about when we reference, when we talk over Seattle's decision to trade down out of the third round. But when he was speaking about Charbonnet, who again we'll talk about, he said how we knew we wanted to take Derek, and then how they kind of blew Zach Charbonnet off because they didn't think they'd have a shot at him. So Derek was clearly the best guy for them there. We did wonder if Michael Mayer would be the pick, but obviously he got taken before Seattle's. But Derek was clearly highly regarded. So cool that they got their guy. Does remind me a bit of Boye Mafe, and they said it did too in the fact that he was athletic. The good news is though that Hall for me is like a much better, savvier, more aware football player right now than Mafe was coming out. Mafe was super raw and kind of clunky, and kind of similarly linear and north-south. So this is clearly their new type. But the thing with Hall for me is even if he doesn't offer much as a rusher, which maybe he will with what Griff spoke about, he sets a really solid edge, really good edge. In theory, he should be able to learn coverage stuff and be able to drop into coverage effectively. But the way he sets an edge means you won't have to go and sign Darryl Johnson off the street because Darryl Taylor can't be trusted to set an edge. And the way he sets an edge means you won't go and have to sign 35-year-old Bruce Irvin off the street because you can't trust Darryl Taylor to set an edge and Darryl Johnson's got injured. Like they now have an actual edge rush rotation of Uchenna Nwosu, Darryl Taylor, Boye Mafe, who in his second season should hopefully be there, and then Derek Hall, all very athletic with good testing numbers. And I like how Hall offers a kind of different dimension to their rush. In terms of the Sports Info Solutions pressure percentage and stuff like that, I'm trying to find where he ranks on it, which kind of speaks to the fact that he didn't do too well in that area. He's 25th overall with an 11%, which is tied with Robert Beal Jr., Isaiah Foskey, Dylan Horton, Tyrus Wheat, Jordan Wright. So not great.
Yeah.
Ty.
Also, some of it really quick. Sorry, on the production point. Sorry, Ty. A lot of it is so like Auburn plays so many RPO teams where it's just like they've schemed past edge rush out of the game of football, and it's annoying to watch. So that's part of it. Like watching him against Ole Miss and Mississippi State is just annoying because it's just worthless tape. You can't eval in either direction with it. But anyway, go ahead.
And even with that said, he had 19.5 sacks and 29.5 tackles for loss in his college career, which is pretty impressive production in the SEC too.
TFLs are important in terms of predictive power for college.
And his power is obvious, especially against the bad tackles. It's just about like a consistency and, limited ops as you speak to, Griff. But Ty, what did you think of Hall?
Well, you talked about it earlier. You guys addressed everything on the field, but you talked earlier about how important it seemed that character was for the Seahawks heading into this draft. And I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who has a better story than Derek Hall. So, that obviously, I'm sure that had a pretty major impact on their decision here to go with him. Especially so high at 37. I'm sure that they had some trade interest there as well, and so to opt to stick and pick Hall there, I think speaks volumes as well.
Yep.
I think so. Really quick, like on the character thing, like why that's like what that probably in their eyes translates to. Like it's not just culture, like always going to work hard. Like every prospect obviously has like a range of outcomes that you can foresee. Doesn't mean that they're going to hit one outcome or the other, but if he has a realistic potential. And so I imagine to take him at 37, their character eval meant that they think it's likely he can hit his potential based off of those factors. So I guess that's why it's so important to them. So.
Okay. So there's probably some stuff that I've missed on Hall, but it's clear that, as you said, they liked him. Character-wise as well as what they can do on the field. Oh yeah, Schneider praised his motor hustle. So there you go.
I mean, I hope they're not drafting hustle and motor at 37 overall. Like I hope, well, he tries really hard. That's great, but what about football players?
Yeah.
Like what about playing the sport?
Yeah.
So
it seems like you can set the edge a little bit and all that. So yeah,
definitely
seems like there's some talent there. Anyway, sorry.
So with their second round pick, sorry, I'm really bad at this. Grade the pick.
I'll go B. I'll go B.
Griffin.
I was thinking B minus, but I'll be nicer and go B.
I'm gonna err on the side of what my gut reaction was, and I'll go C plus right now. Especially at the if this happened the third round, or even if it happened at their next second round pick, I would have given it a B.
So you'd have taken Benton, would you? Or
I would have, and I would ride the roller coaster with Benton and trust that Hurt would get him up to speed with how he wants to engage blocks consistently. So
yeah, I'll go B minus. Okay.
I look forward to being wrong.
With the second round pick, number 52 overall, Seattle picked up a running back in UCLA's Zach Charbonnet. As Schneider said, we kind of blew Zach off a little bit because we figured he'd be gone. As in, at the start of the day 2, they didn't think Zach Charbonnet would be there. Obviously, Bijan Robinson went high and Jahmyr Gibbs went high, both top 15 picks. Robinson a top 10 pick. To Detroit, guys,
running back.
Are you all right with this?
So I mean, I think they're definitely gonna pass a lot this year, but this is just another sign they just really freaking like running backs. But so if you're gonna take a running back, he probably was the best running back available. He had a high explosive run rate in college, which is really important for predicting future success. Although I don't think his skill set really portends to having a high explosive run rate in the NFL. He also had a high success rate though, especially at a gun and interestingly, especially at a pistol. And I think that's really what they're going for here because he was probably the best combination of having being the best player available at running back and also the specific type of running back they needed to complement Ken Walker. I think Walker will get better at the snap to snap consistency with, patience and vision and hitting the hole when he should and just getting all the yards that are there when there's not a home run possibility. But what Charbonnet is really, really, really good at is kind of like Chris Carson with the shotgun inside zone run, feeling out that backside wash and then just hitting it and getting all the yards that are there. He has really good vision at the first level, second level, etc. And he's not slow in the open field. He's just not like a difference maker. But I think he's still fairly explosive though. So he can get 0 to 60 pretty quick. It's just he doesn't get to 80. So he doesn't get 60 to 80 very often, like Ken Walker can. He doesn't like erase people's angles, but he's a really like sharp cut runner and get upfield. He can set up guys with his feet a little bit. It's impressive. So I think he helps. I think as a running backs go, he makes a lot of sense. It's just, running back in the second round. So after they took a running back in the second round last year, so there's a natural value discussion to have. But what did you guys think?
Yeah, the positional value thing, we can go on and on and on about that. I find it painfully boring though. So we won't go on for too long about that. But overall, hey, get good players. Zach Charbonnet is a good player. So at the end of the day, I'm cool with that aspect of it. And he does help them in some certain areas where they were lacking last year. And what's the biggest complaint that we really had with Kenneth Walker last year? Too hesitant at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't really hit the hole. Inside zone's a little bit of a problem for him. You're not getting the most out of those runs with him that you probably should. Charbonnet fixes that. So from that aspect, I like the pick. Value-wise, not as much. But also, if you were going to take Zach Charbonnet, that's where you were going to have to take him. So I don't know. We can all go in a circle about this conversation at the end of the day, but he's a good player. If you want my grade, I'll just give the grade now. I'll give it like a C. I think he'll help. Would I have made that pick though? No.
Wow. Yeah. Schneider mentioned Charbonnet's toughness, effort, and maturity. So again, clearly a good character guy. There was also an interesting thing about the upsets. So I said we'd talk about them. So Schneider said on their decision to trade down, which we'll analyze. But he said, throughout the process, we had a couple of upsets there. meaning that we had some guys go that we were interested in. It happens especially early in the draft. And then also he mentioned how specifically when asked about the defensive line, he's said, does his same logic about not panicking and pushing just to do it apply to the defensive line? And Schneider responded, yes, exactly. Like I said, we've had, had some upsets today and it happens, So the real upset to highlight would be Keanu Benton going to the Pittsburgh Steelers at pick 49. That, given Seattle picked at 52, feels like a sucker punch. Obviously, then Zach Pickens went at 60. Byron Young went at 70. Seattle next picked in the 80s. And that was that. But before we get to what they did at the 80s, Griff, can you please grade the Charbonnet pick for me?
I'll go C. It's not a D. It's not an F. It's a C.
I will give it a C plus because I feel it's big that one thing we haven't really mentioned, he's versatile in not just inside zone, but he's familiar with a lot of different concepts. And he can also catch the ball, and he has done pass protection now. He mentioned how he can improve the kind of physical aspect of that and the technique aspect, but in terms of his awareness, he knows what he's doing. And so he should be able to contribute whenever Seattle needs him to, along with Kenneth Walker's ability to do that. And Pete Carroll spoke about finding the mix. I think it's also big to have genuine competition for Walker, and running back was a need for Seattle, just a flat out need. Okay, they have Walker who can do a lot of stuff, but after him, DJ Dallas is fine. Travis Homer, they lost to as their passing down back, their elite pass protector. And then obviously also Rashad Penny departed. So they did have a need there. They like having multiple running backs. And so it is what it is. Whatever. Seattle again, best player available. So at 83, was it 83 or was it 89? I want to say 83.
It was 83.
Thank you, Ty. 83. At 83, Seattle went to the Denver Broncos and traded down. The reason they traded down, Schneider said, they had a goal that they wanted to try and get some stuff for next year's draft. They also had a couple of upsets, and so they felt real blessed to be able to get into a deal with Denver. And he also said that next year's class is supposed to be really good. Now, Denver gave up pick 108. So Seattle moved down from 83 to 108. And they also gave up a third-round pick next year, which even for a future pick is a very high deal. At first, in the chat live, it was reported to me by chat as a fourth-round pick next year. And I was like, that's kind of steep, but it's for future picks. So maybe you change from a fifth to a fourth. But a third-rounder, Denver, really? For Riley Moss? Really? What's going on? Anyway,
a white cornerback.
Hey.
I haven't seen that before.
So in our lifetimes,
I didn't even notice.
Right. That shit blew my mind.
Yeah, you just don't see that.
Yeah.
grade the trade down.
A plus, right? Like
it's great value.
I don't know who they should have. I don't know who they could have drafted there, which makes that palatable.
Yeah. I love the subtext behind the trade of just being like, hey, this draft kind of sucks.
Yeah. We like next year's draft a lot better than this one.
Yeah.
So
we went top 50. What the hell?
Yeah, right. Like everyone else was gone, and the players that they would have even thought of taking there, they'd already taken or were gone. So
what's cool about this as well is like who you take there? Well, you take a center, you take a D tackle, you take a guard, and moving forward, like what do they get? They got guys who we thought maybe they should take there.
Yeah. They read the rest of the board correctly right there with that move.
Yeah, so they may have been a bit messed up early, but then I don't know what else they could have done about it, and then they got the rest of it right.
And you know what that extra third-round pick allows them to do?
Get a quarterback if need be.
It allows them to package it along with another perhaps second-round pick for DeForest Buckner. So we're in good shape.
Oh, you're doing that. Right, great.
Or it allows them the luxury of trading for Zadarius Smith.
Exactly.
Guys, I think we can say it gives them flexibility.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Next year is like round 3. We'll get good players next year though, so might as well.
Yeah, or a certain quarterback in Southern California.
Well, the thing too, right? Like going back to the whole discussion about the just who they would have drafted there. Had they been forced to make that pick at 83, would it have been Anthony Bradford?
Yeah.
Yeah, at a certain point, Ty, with how they spoke about how they've whittled their board down, like numbers wise as well,
Yeah.
and they already had 10 picks. Like, who are they? Like, how many names have they got left? Like, guys just get pushed up, don't like inevitably. So, so we're all giving that an A plus.
Yeah, A plus, and we get to hate watch the Broncos for another year.
There you
go. We have
so with pick 108, as Ty has spoiled, but guys, you should know this. You're listening to a podcast on the Seahawks draft. You know what happened. Seattle took out of LSU right guard Anthony Bradford. He also has some experience elsewhere, but he's going to come in and push Phil Haynes. He tested as a very athletic guard. He had over 33-inch long arms, big for Seattle. He was 332 pounds, but more impressively, with that size, 6'4" as well, he had a 1.66 10-yard split, 7.84 seconds, 3-cone, which is fine. The agility was fine, but then the jumps were excellent, 8 foot 10-inch broad and a 30-inch vertical. So super athletic. And then on tape, he's like moving guys. Important people like Duke Manyweather, Brandon Thorne, experts in their field liked him. Brandon Thorne compared him to Phil Haynes. Funny that is. And he's familiar with like a pretty like the LSU offense translates to some of the stuff Seattle will do. Although it feels more inside zone and duo, maybe outside zone, he'll have to pick up a bit more drift.
And with that combine, it should translate to outside zone, under center, or mid zone eventually, right?
Yeah, and they worked him out, right?
Yeah, they did. And so he's played some right tackle too. You can tell the technique applies to when he's playing guard. Like he's very he makes it like a strong point to stay square to the line of scrimmage while still adjusting to the depth of the three technique when they're rushing him. So that's just like he understands footwork. He has a really good technical foundation. He understands angles. I think with his hands, he probably can't get away with some of the stuff he does. He'll tend to punch down the center too often, and leave his arm out there a little bit, so it can get clubbed down at times. Even though he tested well, I don't think he's like he can be susceptible to like the speediest of speed rushes at times, coming hot down the B gap. So, but with improved technique, and he has the combine, theoretically, like the way guards develop in the league, like year 2, year 3 especially, they really start to flower. I think he's a really good player to take where he was taken. And like this is what the Packers do. It's also what the Rams do. They draft guys and let them sit they draft guys in the mid rounds. They let them sit on the bench for a couple of years, and when they get pressed into service, they are serviceable, if not better than that. That's kind of what happened with Haynes, right? And we'll see what happens with Haynes this year, where he gets kind of he probably will be the starter. We'll see how he performs, but this will be like his best effort, I think we'll see from Haynes. And then a couple of years from now, we might see Bradford. We might even see him in 2024. So, I really like the whole concept behind the pick, and I like him as a player.
Yeah. And, I think it's also a good hedge overall for Haynes, because, I mean, Haynes has only played, 5-ish games in his career. And, they're taking a shot on him. They gave him a decent sized contract. So, we'll see. I mean, they obviously really like the player there, but there's a level of uncertainty there that's just undeniable. So I like it from that perspective as well. And Bradford seems like someone that might be able to contribute in 2023 if you do have to go to him. So yeah, I'm down.
There you go. Exactly what I needed. Like I'm annoyed at myself for not noticing that Anthony Bradford existed. Like I hadn't heard of him, and I've watched him a bit and looked at how he tested, and I just hadn't delved into the
He
interior offensive line class enough, but it seems
he
like a really solid pick at this point in the draft.
so that LSU offensive line was a mess, and the right guard, who was Bradford, definitely seemed like he had his act together the most. Also, it's telling that they said they were sweating Cameron Young. It's telling that they took him ahead of Cameron Young too,
And you know what?
considering need.
Pete Carroll on the radio today to Bump and Stacey on Seattle Sports. He said how Anthony Bradford, when asked like what pick he was pleasantly surprised about happening, he said Anthony Bradford. So
Yeah.
pretty cool. And let's go into Cameron Young. Oh, hold on. I did it again. Anthony Bradford, grade the pick.
B.
I'll go B plus, because why not?
Okay.
We're hyping up a right guard taken in the 4th round. Why not?
Well, I can't allow Griff to
factor
be
in the
higher on
value.
a player than me, so B plus.
I got A minus. Let's go. All right, number 123 overall, round 4, Cameron Young out of Mississippi State, defensive tackle who, before the draft, I said would be a good fit for Seattle. So, Cameron Young.
You did say that. Yeah, no, you did say that.
Yeah.
I did say that. I said that, guys. Look at me.
I didn't mind him, but you
You
liked him
did
more
it.
than me, and you said he fits them. So there you go. Boom, bang.
Boom. Now, did I think that he'd be their nose tackle? No, but he is. He was 304 pounds. He probably did slim down slightly to do testing. He has 34.5-inch long arms. He ran a 1.73 second 10-yard split, which is 8.1 on Kentley Platt's relative athletic score. He had a 9-foot broad, which is 7.24 out of 10 on the relative athletic score. He's strikes guys in the way that they like. He's hard to move. They said some kind of crazy stuff about him, which I'm not so sure about. Like he was like the strongest guy at the point of attack in college football, or some stuff like that. The way he knocks back people is impressive, and he said like that's his favorite part of resetting the line of scrimmage. So that's really cool. Good for him.
Yeah.
I don't think he fixes everything, but he shouldn't be expected to. That's not his problem. I think it's a solid pick as a plug and play guy who can play nose tackle, he can play a bit of 3-tech.
Yeah.
Not much more to say than that. Pass rush wise, there's nothing really, but yeah.
Yeah. It's he is, slightly different player, but he's a Tava Rubin, he's Tony McDaniel, he's Alan Branch, he's all these guys. In the fact that he can play nose and probably end for them in their base 3-4, 3-3-5 nickel is really good. It's just good for like roster flexibility, and they needed to, even though like I went on and on and on about how much I liked Puna Ford, how much I liked Shelby and stuff. They can't be paying that many veterans more than veteran minimum contracts. Like you need to get cheaper at a spot that, even though I think they provide more value than what Cam Young probably factors to be, it's like if you're going to be spending money, you need to group that money together and go get Draymond Jones, which ultimately is what they did. And that means you need to replace Shelby and Puna with a rookie contract, and that guy that they replace him with needs to be a serviceable player. And I think he factors in at being that. So it's a fine pick. I give it for where they took him and what the expectations are, it's a B, solid B.
Yeah. I love the Tava Rubin call, by the way, because that's immediately who I thought of. So
there you go.
Yeah. B. Solid B. I'm really interested to see how the whole nose thing plays out with regards to Cam Young, because that was really interesting that they did announce him as that. So
yeah. I mean, 305. I mean, if I don't like in a 5-man front, especially where you've got the players in the B gaps. If you're just a good player, you can make it work. Like, because they don't have to, even though they're mirror stepping and playing a 2-gapping technique, they're not necessarily playing a 2-gap assignment. Like you can lag the nose or you just fall into the backside A, and it's just kind of bullshit. Like you don't have to be 350. I think it's more fun when it's a 350 guy, but.
And I said about him how he's good at power stepping into guys, so that's typically outside shade stuff. But like actually going back and watching him, it's a lot of actual inside alignment stuff where he's just playing really tight on and heavy on guys and stepping into them with like lateral footwork, but getting a really good strike and pulling his hip through and getting good knockback. So that applies to that head up nose position. Pete Carroll said to him during the NFL draft call, I'm not going to do a Pete Carroll impression, but I will try and get the tone right. He said, "We just want you to come in huge and ready to go. And I know the huge part's easy. That won't be a problem. Speaking of huge, the defensive coordinator wants to talk to you. This is Clint Hurt. So they want him to eat lots, which again, I don't know if that that's you can't really force guy. That is somewhat of a projection. Like even though he's good at knocking people back, you can't suddenly force a 300-pound guy to be 335 pounds.
The beauty of it is that if nose tackle doesn't work out in the vein they want it to work out, they can just have him play 3 and 4i, and it's fine. Whatever. He's a 500 snap early down snap eater. That's all that's going on here. So, now he said I got a little twist in pass rush. He used the word twist. So, all right, I'm not going to rule it out, but
okay. Just
our expectations are what they are.
Yeah. I'll give him a B plus. I think round 4 is actually probably a slight reach, but we will never know. I also think they had to do it. That like they would have been screwed, and they said they were sweating that one out.
Well,
look, guys,
look
the
who
Seahawks
came
still
after
wound
him.
up with the next Aaron Donald.
Hell yeah! I mean, look who came after him at defensive line. It's like there is no one. It was Jacqueline Roy was the next pure defensive tackle.
Yeah. So Seattle then picked round 5, pick 151, defensive end Mike Morris, Michigan, who Griff had highlighted as a standout player when watching Michigan. I'd also liked what I saw from him, but all of his stuff was mainly as an outside guy.
Right.
And like almost in a 2-point, right? Like his best pass rush is in a 2-point as an outside linebacker. He slimmed down to the combine. He was 265.
Was he 265 really? Good lord.
Hold on. Let me get the
I
actual.
thought it was like 270 something, but
sorry. He was 275, 6'5", 33.5-inch long arms, and he tested with a 4.95 seconds 40, which is poor, but a 1.64 seconds 10-yard split, which is wow. He jumped bad. His agility was bad. But that 10-yard split gives you something to work with. You add on a bit of weight, which somehow he's added on 20 pounds. He did that for the Seahawks and was like sending them a video of him on the scales that morning that they took him in on day 3. So he clearly wanted to be a Seattle player. He talked to his agent about the decision as well. And so rather than playing him as a 4-3 end or a outside linebacker in the 3-4, they're going to play him as a 3-4 defensive end. But in Seattle, that basically means as a 3 tech, occasionally 4i, which he's done a bit of, but as Pete Carroll himself admitted, is kind of a projection. Like he hasn't actually done too much of it. They said no more backing away from tables to him, like load up on food. You keep on growing. We're going to work you inside, get you at free tech. Let's keep them damn calories on, Clint Hurt told him. So this is like wild. This is wild, but they clearly like the guy. They're big on his character. He was disappointed with how the season ended because he had a high ankle sprain that kind of stalled his progress. But Griff, this is like, you liked him, but
it's such a funny. Well, the whole idea is funny to me. I really liked him as a player, and that I thought he was a 3rd rounder. So getting him in the 5th is good value. Like I don't care about his combine, but that was all under the pretense that he's an edge, and he wasn't just one of. So the idea was like, okay, he's 6'6". If he's truly played at his college listed weight of 292, 6'6", 292, moving as fluidly as he does, like he has the movement skills of a guy who's like 6'6", 275, moving with, but that means because he moves that well, that means like there's 290 pounds behind every movement. And like, yeah, he's got a really, really good like long arm. It can work inside the tackle. But he's one of those bigger guys that even though he is a power rusher, like his game is power, he uses space to set up stuff. He's not necessarily playing in a phone booth right off the snap. Like he likes to use his length and height and his footwork, his again, his coordination, his movement skills out in space, and then powers it, cranks it back in and stuff like that. So projecting him to the inside as a rusher is interesting because it's like he doesn't win in short area, even though he's a power guy. He kind of likes to set up stuff. So it feels like a projection in a lot of ways. But the thing is, I think their thinking is, he doesn't necessarily have a pad level issue. He's just as tall. So I think the idea is we're going to have him with his hand in the dirt. One, you start there. He's going to be playing with a shorter area because we're going to force him to. And then his natural coordination and and fluidity will eventually take over, is I think that is the theory, is the intention. I don't know if it will. But if the pass rush skills and acumen does apply inside, that's great, because that means they got another guy that can rush the passer inside. But then what will really take it to new heights is if his run defense is good enough to warrant playing him on early downs, have him actually be a factor of the early down rotation. Because if it does, then that means you also get the benefits of his pass rush on early downs. It's just he's an idea right now, start to finish, as Jared Kelenic hits a double off of the right field wall. One runner scores. It's 2-1 Mariners at the top of the eighth.
Wow.
Jerry Bonds, baby.
Watch. Yeah,
Jerry
Bonds. Jerry Bonds. Anyway, so yeah, I like the pick. It's Pandora's box. It's Pandora's box with him.
He had a breakout season last year of 11 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, but that was mainly from outside production. So,
right.
I mean, the buy-in is that he's only 22 years old, and maybe he's still learning his body and stuff like that. But yeah, this is quite the projection. As cool as the idea is, it's wild. And it's sort of a thing where Seattle kind of had to do it with how the draft played out and where they're at, but it's crazy that they've had to do it. But it's also going to be fun to see it play out. Ty, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, everything that Griff said, right? Like, there's no way to really assess this pick until we actually see, because it's a completely different role for him. I have no idea how he's going to adapt to playing that. Like, I can't. I feel like it would be irresponsible to both give him a grade lower or higher than C, because it's just it's C for wait and see, because we have no idea.
Oh, that was good, Ty. I like that.
That was
I
good.
feel bad for him because it's not his fault, and he has some pretty intriguing tape. But yeah, I'm gonna steal that, Ty. I'll go C+.
There you go.
I'll go B, just because he's in the 5th round. Like, why the hell not? It's a 5th round pick.
My C+ is we have to wait and see. Plus, he might, turn out good. Right. So, pick 154. Just 3 picks later. Oluwatimi out of Michigan, the center.
It's actually Ulu. That's Ulu. The Seahawks put out a pronunciation guy.
Oh, my apologies.
Oluwatimi.
Olusegun. That's such a good name.
So the eyes are all short eyes. The first eye is
it's Timmy.
Is short. Timmy. Then the second eye is long eye. Okay.
Oluwatimi. Okay. There we go. Let's not get that wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was, Griff, probably your best center after Tippmann. And
well, no, I had Weipler in front of him, but he ended up
small.
Right. And I actually thought the play strength wasn't there. He's just really solid. He's really solid in pass protection. As a run blocker, he's good on combos. I don't think he really somebody said, like, publicly, who's like a high profile person, was like, it might have even been John Schneider. Somebody said that he really moves bodies run blocking, and I don't see that. I think he's just fine. Like, at least one-on-one, he doesn't really, but he's, again, part of combos, he's fine, but pass protection is really solid. I think he can get rocked a little bit because, he's a center. Those guys aren't that big. If they were, they'd be guards.
Well, you say that, but he does have 33-inch long arms at his pro day, 32 and 3/4 at the combine, and he's 309 pounds and 6'2.5". Like, that is pretty big.
That's good density. Yeah, that's good density. And but I like him. And then also a lot of the things people say about him when they're heaping praise on him is how smart he is, and that's so important for center. Communication with protections, chemistry with the quarterbacks, handling stuff post snap. like handoffs or pass offs on twists and stuff. So I think it's a really good pick. So love it. I love it. I give it a B plus.
9'2" broad jump as well, which impressive numbers. Ty and a 7.58 seconds 3 cone is above average. Ty, how are you with?
Yeah, I mean, he's played a lot of games, a lot of experience there. Like, he's just solid across the board. He's, kind of a jack of all trades, master of none type of dude. He's going to play some games for this team and start some games, and I think that you feel pretty good about that. I don't think that he's going to be, I mean, at least as far as projections go, I don't know if he's going to be a long-term starter, but as far as having depth, and in case, Evan Brown gets hurt or doesn't pan out this year and, whatever down the line, I mean, for a 5th round pick, to me, this is, as far as value goes, this is an A for me. I think he's just really solid. He's gonna help them. And he gives them good depth along the line. So,
And Whiteler was tiny, and Ohio State's offense does not ask as much as Michigan's offense. Like something that John Schneider spoke about as well and Pete Carroll, how Michigan's offense asked more of centers. He made the run and pass calls. You could see like the little I've watched of him, the kind of stuff going on line of scrimmage that he's responsible for, bits of that anyway. And he's described as super smart. And Duke Manyweather, the offensive line expert, he said how he's Seattle at the future as a starting center. He's going to push Evan Brown, and that's exactly what they needed. And hopefully some future at the position we will see, but they needed this, and having young depth rather than like aging depth or like off the street depth is really nice. So
Indeed.
I'm a big fan of that move. I'll give it fine. I'll give it an A as well. Griff.
Yeah. I'll give it a B plus.
Okay.
Is what I said.
Hater.
I like,
negative.
Fine. A minus.
All right.
Okay, we're nearly there. Number 198, 6th round. Jarek Reed II out of New Mexico.
There we go. UNM, baby. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. Represent, Ty.
Let's go.
We have an alumnus.
Well, technically, I went to the community college there was some classes taken at UNM. But look, I was an honorary member. All right, I was an honorary Lobo.
Works for me.
Yeah,
works for me.
Yeah.
So he was relatively unknown, other than the fact that he had a top 30 visit in Seattle. He tested really well, other than he's just small. Like he had a 4.46 second 40. He had a 38-inch vertical, but he's 196 pounds and under 5'10". So Griff, you obviously hate him because he's short.
Where is this coming from? I like the small guys. It's on defense. I like the small guys. Offense, it's a little different. Well, I like small receivers too. I got nothing on small receivers.
But you then see the highlight tape of Jarek Reed, and he looks like a mini Quandre Diggs. And Pete Carroll then is asked about, does Quandre Diggs' his experience sort of encourage you to make this pick? And he says yes. Then their situation's fairly similar. They're both 6th round picks. You can see elements of like both in each other. And I think it's cool how he has experience in a 3-3-5 defense, which New Mexico State runs, which isn't a 3-3-5 like the 3-3-5 personnel that Seattle gets in now, but it's a 3-3-5 like a 3-3 stack, which is a 3-safety system, which requires each of the safeties to do a variety of things: a bit of nickel slot coverage, a bit of high coverage, a bit of down in the box coverage, a bit of playing a deep half shell over the top, a bit of playing in the post third, a bit of everything. So he's well versed in a lot of different coverages and a lot of different things. And Kyle Scott clearly had an interesting time with him on the visit. He said, remember what we talked about. This guy seems serious. Schneider described him as an angry little dwarf, which he clearly is a fan of. And he's got a chip on his shoulder. He mentioned how he came up from the mud, being from Mississippi. That's how he feels about it. And he also wants to prove that the small DBs can make it. So
yeah.
Pretty cool pick for a 6th rounder. I think he's played all special teams as well, so he's going to be a special teamer. A great guy to push Virginia safety, Seattle depth. What's his name? Joey Young.
You mean Blunt?
Joey Blunt. Yep,
Joey
there you go.
Blunt.
Thank you. Great guy to push Joey Blunt.
Cracking up 4-2. Yeah, I
were
mean,
great.
I feel like 6th-round pick. He had a really good combine. They talk about his aggressiveness. They've talked about him as a gunner. I feel like primarily he's just an exciting special teamer, right? I mean, at least that's where he's going to start. I really liked how Pete described him, and Maddie, how you described his profile as an actual safety. Though Pete used the phrase he's as a slot, he's like a safety cover guy. So I mean, there are two types of slots. There are the man cover slots who can actually man up on a slot receiver, carry them across the field and cover one. And then there's the guys that can, carry them and cover three. There's some overlap there with the cover one stuff, but then kind of the inside leverage matching, stuff like that. So I'm be curious to see. I mean, he didn't have a great 3-cone, but otherwise he tested really well. Maddie, I'll be curious when you dive into his tape, what kind of slot he is precisely. Like, do we get any snaps of him manned up on a slot receiver, a shifty 5'9", 175 slot guy who runs a crazy 3-cone? How does he handle that? Otherwise, yeah, it just sounds like he's safety depth, the kind of safety you can roll down with outside rotation and cover 3 in a pinch perhaps, and then the inside leverage overhang and too high where he's over a slot receiver but not really carrying him, like the Ugo Amadi brand, but theoretically much more explosive, maybe more of a playmaker mentality, although Ugo was really solid with his assignments and roles and stuff, like really solid. But so
Yes.
let's why not 6th-round pick
On
B
the
plus.
conference call, it's interesting how
B
he said
plus.
that Seattle told him he'll play the safety/nickel position, slot corner position, also just everyone on special teams. Like, I don't want to read too much into it, but Julian Love being signed, maybe they're planning to run more 3-3-5 nickel bear, where rather than having a nickel like Kobe Bryant out there, they have a third safety in there like a Jamal Adams, and then they have another safety and they rotate.
They can
Try and be
interchange.
interchangeable. Yeah, I don't know. Interesting. Ty.
I hope we see more 3-3-5.
Yeah. I think he's going to make an impact on special teams right away. And, again, you got to think long term about the safety position. It seems like they're already doing that with the structure of Julian Love's deal. Who knows what future Jamal Adams has in Seattle. And then, who knows what the future is going to look like for Quandre as well. So I like adding the asset. He's someone that I think can be developed a little bit. He's kind of like a ball of clay, and we'll see if he gets into any game action this year. But I like the long term outlook for him overall. So I'll give it a B.
There you go.
Griff, did you grade it?
Yeah, I did. B plus.
I'll go B plus. I'm being very positive. Blimey.
There you go.
Look at you.
Be positive.
All right.
Right. Final
Last
pick.
pick.
We've done it, guys. Number 237 overall, round 7, Kenny McIntosh with the coolest draft call. He was very emotional. Because it looked like he was going to go undrafted. Maybe on reflection, it's better to go undrafted. But instead, he's a Seattle Seahawk. The Georgia guy, he didn't run very fast, which I think probably matters to people. He also had good blocking, obviously, playing at Georgia. But still, like, he was a productive back. And, okay, he ran a 4.62 seconds 40, but he can do a bit of everything for Seattle, right?
Yeah. Special teamer, pass protection. I mean, they need depth. Like, he's the 4th running back on the depth chart. Those guys still get carries. As a runner, I don't think he has any special traits, but I think he's really well balanced. Like, good vision, not the best long speed, but there's something, some breakaway. He's got good contact balance. He's not the biggest, strongest, most powerful guy. It's like he checks off a lot of boxes, just he doesn't check off any one of them super well or at a super high rate. But I think he's a good all-around football player, and getting him in the 7th is pretty solid. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, the thing that I heard when he was first picked was like, oh, he's a good pass catcher, but that's really it. I don't think that's the case at all. I think he can do a little bit of everything for them.
Pass catching is a good point.
Yeah, pass catching is like a strength of his, though, and he actually runs some pretty good routes as well. So
I think that's where he immediately contributes, right? Like if you think about how Homer first got his reps, like it's got to be as that kind of scat back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't whatever you do not search on Twitter scat back. Just don't do it.
No, don't do that. The interesting thing too is that Georgia, the way that they deployed him, they kind of used him as a Swiss Army knife a little bit. They ran some jet sweeps with him, and he seemed pretty comfortable with that, and they had some success with that. So maybe that's something that they explore with him, because they've tried to do that a little bit here in the past under Waldron. So maybe that's something that they try to do with him as well, on top of the pass catching stuff, and having him come in on third downs for pass protection. But I think he's someone that I think he's probably going to make this team, because they've typically carried 4 running backs anyway. So
easily,
yeah. So I think he ends up making this team, and I think he ends up carving out a role for himself a little bit. It's just going to be interesting to see what exactly that looks like.
That would be so cool for him as well, because
Yeah.
he was so emotional, and he seems like he's fully in. So it's a clever kind of pick to make, really, because you're going to get a highly motivated player. Yeah. Okay. Grade that pick.
A.
D. No, okay. I'll give it a B minus.
Okay.
I running back too slow. I mean, what are we talking about here? I mean, it's a 7th round pick. Fine.
Whatever.
Okay.
Hater.
That's the Seahawks draft. Finally, I wanted to mention how Seattle left this draft with only one over £300 interior defensive lineman. We can talk about undrafted free agents another time, I think, because this podcast has been rather long. Recap of the full roundup of the Russell Wilson trade. We had a question about the Russell Wilson trade, a kind donation from Reflect the Sun, asking, is the Seattle trade of Russell Wilson to Denver now confirmed to be a better deal than when Dallas traded Herschel Walker, or do we need to wait a year or two to see? Interesting question. The full roundup of it, because Seattle's now used those Denver picks that they got. The Broncos got Russell Wilson and Ioma Uwazurike. Uwazurike. Sorry, the A looks like an E. Uwazurike. 2022 4th round pick. Seattle got quarterback Drew Lock, tight end Noah Fant, defensive tackle Shelby Harris, offensive tackle Charles Cross, outside linebacker Boye Mafe, outside linebacker Tyreek Smith, who we've yet to see, cornerback Devon Witherspoon, and outside linebacker Derek Hall. Is that Herschel Walker bad, or do we need to wait?
It's bad. Well, I guess we have to wait, because I mean, what if he plays like he did in his best years in Seattle next year? Then Denver is
make it take, you coward.
So far is absolutely horrific, and there's no reason to be super optimistic other than just wish casting. I'm not saying it's impossible, but
Sean Payton, offensive genius, maybe he'll let Russ cook.
Of course,
maybe finally Russ will cook,
or maybe he'll run the ball in an effective manner and scheme up the right amount of play action deep shots, which are effective.
Perhaps, which wasn't that.
Or they could throw it 55 times a game. So. Because that's perfectly tailored to Russ's skill set.
Russell Wilson did have surgery on his knee, so maybe he's healthy.
True. He was on the injury report.
Got a new knee
a few
in
times,
there.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so I'd say it's slightly
question,
early, but also we kind of can believe what we've seen from Russ, because this isn't a 1-year deal.
Yeah. To answer the question directly, it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah, and like what we've heard out of Denver and how Sean Payton views Russ and that whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued, and we have a reason to vote to root against the Denver Broncos. Not just me being a toxic Matty, but they gave Seattle a 3rd round pick for.
We wouldn't want to be toxic here.
Yeah, screw Denver, and yeah,
whoa,
ha, the Avalanche. I'm a big hockey fan. Amazing.
Lol.
Denver washed.
Go Kraken.
Right.
Go
Denver
Mariners.
doesn't have a coastline.
Go Kraken.
Mariners are up 2-1 over the Oakland Athletics. Top of the 9th.
Seattle Kraken are up. Seattle Kraken are up 4-3 over the Dallas Stars. They just gave up a goal.
They can't still call them the Athletics in Las Vegas, can they? There's just no way that works.
The Las Vegas Athletics, no.
And it's just wrong. Like, if you're going to relocate like that.
Yeah, they can't do the whole Raiders thing. They got to rebrand fully.
Anyway,
Mhm.
I think to finish this off in terms of the Seahawks is Pete Carroll on the Seahawks NFL draft. We did not draft by need, but we drafted for the guys that we really wanted. I think we saw that play out.
Yeah. Except
And
for day 3, that seemed to be more balancing need and
well,
guys they wanted.
I guess. And then Pete also said, an observation from when we walk out tonight, it feels like we've continued from where we left off last year in the draft, just the kinds of people, the opportunities that the guys are going to be faced with when they come here and they see their chances. It's going to feel like last year in some regards. It's our job to do a good job to put that together and make sure that that happens and we maintain the momentum and the movement. We love last year's class and we're fired up about this year's class, and it just feels like we've added on to it. And I wonder, interior defensive line, Shelby Harris, maybe, Al Woods, maybe, but it's a big, big opportunity for Cameron Young, a 4th-round pick, to be playing some very significant snaps, and for Mike Morris, a 5th-round pick who has not even played inside that often, to be playing big snaps. So Seattle wanted to get more dynamic up front. They added Draymond Jones as a big blockbuster free agent. They've also lost a lot of players, and I don't really know how they can fill those holes without rookies stepping up. So it's going to be interesting.
Here we go.
We'll have a pod on the undrafted free agents. We'll have a pod doing tape breakdowns. We also actually kindly had a donation. By the way, you can get a super sticker, and we had a donation from Adam Carter, saying super sticker. And I saw what the super sticker is. It's a coffee. It's a coffee mug, which is perfect for us.
Let's go.
So, Adam, enjoy your virtual coffee and your super sticker. Thank you for the donation. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in live. If you're listening, please give us a 5-star review. If you're watching right now, like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow the Twitter at Seattle Overload, follow Ty at Dane Gunzelas, follow Griff at CMike Spinmove, follow me at Matty F. Brown, subscribe to my Substack, Seahawks on Tape. There'll be tape breakdowns on there as well. Make sure you check out what everyone else is doing. Ty also has his Mariners stuff. Maybe they'll get to 500.
Hey, we're one step closer potentially. 3 outs away. 3 outs away from being one step closer to 500.
Sheesh.
Let's go. Game at a
And
time,
until
baby.
next
Let's
time,
go. 1-0 mindset.
this has been the Seattle Overload.